The lights of Kepler Station twinkled like stars against the black space around it. The huge metal structure spun slowly, creating gravity for the thousands of beings who called it home. Ships came and went every day, bringing traders, diplomats, and scientists from dozens of different worlds. Dr. Sarah Chen walked through the research section, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. She carried a datapad in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her lab coat had small stains from her morning experiments. She looked like any other human scientist, nothing special about her appearance. But Sarah was special in one important way. She was one of the few humans who had formed a life bond with an alien species. Her mate, HFY, was waiting for her in their shared laboratory. HFY belonged to the Volari, a race that looked like walking crystals. Their bodies were made of a hard, clear material that sparkled in the light. They were tall and thin with long arms and legs. Their faces had no mouth, but they could speak through vibrations in their crystal bodies. The sound was like wind chimes singing. Sarah, HFY's voice rang out as she entered the lab. The protein samples are ready for testing. Sarah smiled. After 3 years together, she could hear the love in HFY's crystal voice. The Volari were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to feel emotions from other beings. They were natural peacemakers and diplomats. Most species loved having Volari around because they could sense when someone was lying or angry. Perfect timing, Sarah said, setting down her coffee. The computer finished running the genetic sequences overnight. Their research was groundbreaking. Sarah and HFY were studying how different species could live together and help each other. They had discovered that some alien bacteria could help humans live longer, while human gut bacteria could help Volari process new types of food. Their work was making life better for everyone on the station. The laboratory was full of strange equipment. Glass containers held samples from dozens of different worlds. Computer screens showed spinning models of DNA and protein structures. The air smelled clean and sterile, with a hint of ozone from the machines. Sarah loved this place. She loved the work, but more than that, she loved working beside HFY. The Volari had taught her so much about life and patience. In return, Sarah had shown HFY the human way of solving problems through persistence and creativity. Dr. Chen? A voice called from the doorway. Sarah turned to see Marcus Kane, her old friend from Earth. Marcus was the station's security liaison, which meant he helped keep peace between all the different species. He was a big man with short gray hair and kind eyes. He had served in the Earth military before coming to Kepler Station. "Hey, Marcus," Sarah said. "What brings you to our little corner of science?" Marcus stepped into the lab and nodded respectfully to HFY. The Volari's crystal body chimed softly in greeting. Marcus had learned to read some Volari body language over the years. "Just checking in," Marcus said. "We've got some new arrivals coming in next week." "A delegation from the Krex Dominion." Sarah felt HFY's crystal body dim slightly. The Volari could sense emotions, and they often picked up on things before others noticed them. Sarah trusted HFY's instincts completely. "The Krex?" Sarah asked. "I thought they stayed in their own territory." "Usually they do," Marcus said. "But they're expanding their trade routes. The Station Council wants to make a good impression." The Krex were known throughout the galaxy as warriors. Their species was built for fighting, with thick armor-like skin and powerful muscles. They respected strength above all else and had little patience for what they called weak species. "Will there be any problems?" Sarah asked. Marcus shrugged. "Probably not. The Krex are rough around the edges, but they follow galactic law. As long as everyone stays calm, everything should be fine." HFY's crystal body made a soft humming sound. Sarah had learned to recognize this as worry. The Volari were peaceful by nature, and the idea of warriors on the station made HFY nervous. "Don't worry," Sarah said, reaching out to touch HFY's arm. The crystal was warm and smooth under her fingers. "Marcus knows how to handle difficult visitors." "That's right," Marcus said with a smile. "Besides, I'll be around to keep an eye on things. Nothing's going to happen to you two." After Marcus left, Sarah and HFY returned to their work. They spent the morning testing protein samples and recording data. The work was slow and careful, but Sarah found it relaxing. There was something peaceful about the routine of science. Around noon, they took a break and walked to the station's central park. The park was a large open space filled with plants from many different worlds. The ceiling was made of clear metal, showing the stars outside. Artificial gravity and atmosphere made it feel like being on a planet. Many different species used the park. Sarah saw a group of Altarian children playing near a fountain. Their blue skins sparkled in the artificial sunlight. Two elderly Kethvar sat on a bench, their forearms moving as they talked in their clicking language. A family of Nexti floated past, their gas-filled bodies drifting like balloons. "I love this place," Sarah said as they sat on their favorite bench. "It reminds me of home," HFY chimed. "The crystal gardens of Alara have many different types of growing things." Sarah leaned against HFY's shoulder. The crystal was cool and solid, and she could feel the gentle vibrations of HFY's heartbeat through the hard surface. It was different from touching another human, but no less loving. They had met 4 years ago when Sarah first arrived at Kepler Station. She had been assigned to study Valari biology, and HFY had volunteered to help with the research. At first it was just work, but over time they had grown closer. The bond between them was unusual. Most humans paired with other humans, and most Valari paired with other Valari. But Sarah and HFY had found something special together. They understood each other in ways that went beyond words or species. "Sarah," HFY said softly, "I sense something changing. The harmony of the station feels different." Sarah trusted HFY's empathic abilities. The Valari could feel the emotional currents that flowed through large groups of people. If HFY sensed change, something was definitely happening. "Is it about the Krex visit?" Sarah asked. "Perhaps," HFY said. "There is fear in the air. And something else. Something harder to identify." Sarah squeezed HFY's hand. "We'll face whatever comes together," she said. "That's what mates do." HFY's crystal body brightened, which Sarah had learned was the Valari version of a smile. "Yes," HFY chimed. "Together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching other beings enjoy the peaceful afternoon. Neither of them knew that in just a few days their quiet life would be shattered forever. The Krex were coming, and with them would come a test that would reveal the true nature of human love and human fury. For now, though, there was only peace. The gentle hum of the station's life support systems, the soft chiming of HFY's voice, and the warmth of two beings who had found love across the vast distances between stars. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. But today, Sarah Chen was just a scientist in love, sitting in a park with her mate, watching the stars turn slowly outside the clear ceiling above them. The Krex ships appeared on Kepler Station's sensors like dark storm clouds. There were 5 of them, each one built for war. Their hulls were black metal covered in spikes and weapon ports. The lead ship was twice the size of the others, marking it as a command vessel. Station Administrator Korvac, an elderly Nexti whose gas-filled body floated behind his desk, watched the ship's approach on his main screen. His 4 tentacle arms moved nervously as he spoke to his staff. "Send them docking coordinates for bays 7 through 11, Korvac said. His voice was breathy and soft like wind through leaves. "And make sure security knows they're coming." Marcus Kane stood beside the administrator's desk, his arms crossed over his chest. He had dealt with Krex before, but never this many at once. Usually they traveled in pairs or alone. "Any idea why they brought so many ships?" Marcus asked. "The message said it was a diplomatic mission," Korvac replied. "But the Krex definition of diplomacy is different from ours." The first Krex ship docked with a loud clang that echoed through the station. Even through the metal walls, everyone could feel the impact. It was like the station itself was being challenged. In their laboratory, Sarah felt the vibration through the floor. She looked up from her microscope to see HFY's crystal body flickering with different colors. The Valari's empathic abilities were picking up something that made them very uncomfortable. "What is it?" Sarah asked. "Pain," HFY said. "Anger and something else. Something that enjoys causing fear." Sarah set down her tools and moved to HFY's side. Through their bond, she could feel her mate's distress. The Valari were naturally peaceful, and being near violent emotions was physically painful for them. "Maybe we should go home early today," Sarah suggested. "You don't need to suffer through this." But HFY shook their head, making a sound like crystal bells. "Others will need help. Many beings on this station are afraid. If I can provide comfort, I must try." This was why Sarah loved HFY so much. Even when they were in pain, the Valari thought of others first. It was the way their species was built, always putting the needs of the community above their own comfort. Down in the docking bay, The airlock doors opened with a hiss. The first beings to step onto Kepler Station were unlike anything most residents had ever seen up close. The Krex warriors were huge, standing nearly 8 feet tall. Their skin was dark gray and covered in natural armor plates. Their faces were brutal, with sharp teeth and small red eyes. Each one carried weapons that were clearly not just for show, but it was their leader who made everyone step back. War Champion Thorak was even larger than his warriors, with scars covering his armor-plated face. He wore a cape made from the hide of some unknown creature, and his weapons were decorated with trophies from past battles. Thorak looked around the docking bay with obvious disgust. He saw humans in their simple clothes, necktie floating peacefully overhead, and a group of Altarian traders with their blue skin and gentle faces. Weaklings, Thorak said in a voice like grinding stone. This station reeks of weakness. His warriors laughed, a sound that made everyone nearby move away quickly. The Krex had no respect for beings they saw as inferior, and that included almost everyone. Administrator Korvac floated down to greet them, his tentacles moving in the formal patterns of diplomatic welcome. War Champion Thorak, he said in his gentle voice. Welcome to Kepler Station. We hope your visit will be productive. Thorak looked at the floating administrator with amusement. Productive? He repeated. Yes, I think it will be very productive. The way he said it made Marcus step forward. His hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but he stopped himself. Starting a fight with the Krex would only make things worse. Is there anything specific you need during your stay? Marcus asked. Thorak turned his red eyes toward Marcus and smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. You are human, he said. I have heard of your species. You are supposed to be warriors, but you look soft to me. We prefer peace when possible, Marcus replied carefully. Peace, Thorak spat. Peace is for the weak. The strong take what they want and crush those who stand in their way. Over the next few hours, the Krex made their presence known throughout the station. They walked through the corridors in groups, pushing aside anyone who didn't move fast enough. They examined the market areas, the living quarters, and the research sections with obvious interest. In the research quarter, HFY was trying to help calm a group of frightened Altarian students. The blue-skinned children had never seen Krex before, and their fear was so strong that HFY was having trouble standing upright. It's okay, HFY chimed softly. They are just visitors. They will leave soon. But Sarah could see that HFY didn't believe their own words. The Valari's crystal body was dim and flickering, a sign of deep distress. Sarah wanted to take HFY home, but her mate refused to abandon the frightened students. That evening, the station council met with War Champion Thorak and his officers. The meeting room was crowded with representatives from all the major species on the station. Everyone hoped that formal talks would help establish peaceful relations with the Krex. Thorak sat at the head of the table like he owned it. His warriors stood behind him, their weapons visible and threatening. The other council members looked small and fragile in comparison. The Krex Dominion has decided to expand our influence in this sector, Thorak announced. This station sits on valuable trade routes that we now claim as our territory. Administrator Korvac's gas-filled body trembled. War Champion, this station is neutral territory. It belongs to no single species. Thorak laughed, a harsh sound that filled the room. Neutral, he said. Nothing is neutral. Everything belongs to whoever is strong enough to take it and hold it. What exactly are you proposing? Asked Dr. Vextar, a elderly Kethvar who served as the station's diplomatic advisor. Simple, Thorak replied. Every species on this station will pay tribute to the Krex Dominion. Food, resources, technology. In return, we will allow you to continue your pathetic lives under our protection. The room erupted in angry voices. Representatives from a dozen species protested at once. The Krex demand was outrageous, turning the free station into a slave colony. This is unacceptable, Korvac said, his tentacles moving in patterns of strong refusal. We cannot agree to such terms. Thorak's smile grew wider and more threatening. Cannot? He repeated. I think you misunderstand the situation. This is not a negotiation. This is me telling you how things will be. And if we refuse? Dr. Vextar asked. Thorak stood up slowly, his massive frame casting a shadow over the table. Then we will demonstrate the cost of refusing the Krex Dominion. We will start with the weakest beings on this station, and work our way up until you understand. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. The Kreks would hurt innocent people to make their point. It was their way of showing superior strength. "Who do you consider the weakest?" Marcus asked, though he already feared the answer. Thorak's red eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "The crystal beings, of course. The Velari. They have no weapons, no armor, no way to fight back. They are perfect examples of what happens to those who do not show proper respect to their betters." In the research quarter, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know about the meeting, but HFY's empathic abilities were picking up waves of malice and threat from across the station. "Something terrible is coming," HFY whispered, their crystal body barely glowing. "I can feel it building like a storm." Sarah held her mate close, feeling the cool crystal surface against her cheek. "Whatever happens," she said, "we'll face it together." Neither of them knew that war champion Thorak had already marked the Velari for destruction. The Kreks leader was planning a demonstration that would teach the entire station about the price of defying superior strength. The storm was indeed coming, and it would change everything. The next morning brought no answers from the station council. War champion Thorak had given them until sunset to accept his demands, and the hours were running out. Across Kepler Station, beings went about their daily routines while fear hung in the air like smoke. Marcus Kane was in his office, trying to find some legal way to protect the station's residents. His computer screen showed galactic law documents and trade agreements, but none of them seemed strong enough to stop the Kreks if they decided to use force. A soft chime from his communicator made him look up. It was a message from the transport division. His supply run to the outer asteroid mines had been moved up by 6 hours due to an emergency equipment failure. He was needed immediately. Marcus hesitated. Leaving the station now felt wrong, but the asteroid miners depended on those supplies to survive. Their life support systems were failing, and without the repair parts he was supposed to deliver, people would die. He made the hardest decision of his life. He would make the supply run as quickly as possible and return before the Kreks deadline. It should only take a few hours. "Sarah," he called over the comm system, "I have to leave the station for a few hours. Emergency supply run. Keep your head down until I get back." In the research laboratory, Sarah heard the message and felt her stomach tighten with worry. Marcus was their protector, their friend who understood how to deal with dangerous situations. Without him, the civilians on the station would be helpless if the Kreks decided to cause trouble. "Marcus is leaving?" HFY asked, their crystal body flickering with anxiety. "Just for a few hours," Sarah said, though she didn't feel as confident as she sounded. "He'll be back before anything happens." But HFY's empathic abilities were picking up something that made them tremble. "The darkness is growing stronger," they said. "The violent emotions are becoming focused, directed." Sarah tried to concentrate on her work, but it was impossible. The protein samples seemed unimportant when she could feel the tension building throughout the station. Through her bond with HFY, she could sense the fear and worry of every being in the research quarter. At noon, the first Kreks warriors appeared in the research section. They walked through the corridors in small groups, examining the laboratories and taking notes on their weapons. They looked like predators studying their prey. Dr. Kelivar, an elderly Velari who ran the xenobiology department, tried to approach them peacefully. "Welcome to our research facilities," he chimed in his crystal voice. "Is there something we can help you find?" One of the Kreks warriors backhanded him casually, sending the old Velari crashing into a wall. Dr. Kelivar's crystal body made a sound like breaking glass as he hit the metal surface. "We don't need help from weaklings," the warrior said. "We're just looking around." Other researchers stopped their work to help Dr. Kelivar, but the Kreks warriors laughed at their concern. To them, hurting the peaceful Velari was amusing, like children breaking toys. In her laboratory, Sarah felt HFY's crystal body suddenly flash with pain. The empathic connection between all Velari meant that when one suffered, they all felt it. "Dr. Kelivar has been hurt," HFY said, their voice tight with shared agony. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. She had spent years learning to control her temper, but seeing her mate in pain because of someone else's cruelty made anger burn in her chest. "Stay here," she told HFY. "I'm going to check on Dr. Kelivar." But HFY stood up, their crystal body chiming with determination. "No, if my people are in danger, I must be with them. It is the Velari way," Sarah wanted to argue, but she knew it was useless. The Valari would never abandon each other, even when facing certain danger. It was both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. Together they made their way to the main research hall where other Valari had gathered around Dr. Kelvar. The old scientist was badly injured, with cracks running through his crystal body, but he was alive. As more Valari arrived to help, the Krex warriors watched with growing interest. War Champion Thorak appeared in the doorway, his massive frame blocking most of the light from the corridor. "How touching," Thorak said, his voice filled with mock sympathy. "The crystal beings care for each other. How wonderfully weak." He walked into the room, and his warriors formed a circle around the gathered Valari. Sarah counted at least 20 Krex, all armed and armored. The research hall suddenly felt very small and very dangerous. "I gave the station council until sunset to accept our terms," Thorak continued, "but they seem to think they can ignore the Krex Dominion. So I have decided to provide a demonstration of what happens to those who defy us." Dr. Kelvar struggled to stand, his damaged crystal body sparkling with effort. "Please," he chimed weakly. "We are scientists. We have no part in politics or war." Thorak smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Exactly," he said. "You are perfect examples of weakness. When we destroy you, the rest of the station will understand their place." Sarah felt something cold and terrible growing in her chest. These weren't just threats anymore. The Krex were actually planning to hurt innocent people to make a point. "You can't do this," she said, stepping forward. "This is neutral territory. There are laws against attacking civilians." Thorak turned his red eyes toward her. "A human," he said with interest. "I wondered when one of you would speak up. Tell me, human, what will you do to stop me?" Sarah's mind raced. She was alone against 20 armed warriors. She had no weapons, no backup, no way to fight. But she couldn't just stand there and watch them hurt HFY and the other Valari. "I'll report this to the Galactic Council," she said. "The whole galaxy will know what you did here." Thorak laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "The Galactic Council is far away," he said, "and they fear the Krex Dominion. By the time they send investigators, you will all be dead and this station will belong to us." He drew his plasma blade, a weapon that glowed with deadly energy. The other Krex warriors did the same, filling the room with the hum of powered weapons. "Now," Thorak said, "let us begin the lesson." HFY stepped forward, their crystal body brightening with courage. "If you must hurt someone," they chimed, "hurt me. Leave the others alone." Sarah's heart nearly stopped. Her mate was offering to sacrifice themselves to save their people. It was exactly what she would expect from HFY, and exactly what she couldn't bear to lose. "No," Sarah said, moving to stand beside HFY. "If you want to hurt them, you'll have to go through me first." Thorak looked at the human and the Valari standing together and smiled wider. "How romantic," he said. "A love story that ends in tragedy. My favorite kind." He raised his plasma blade and pointed it at HFY. "You want to protect your people, crystal being? Then you can be the first to die for them." The blade came down in a burning arc of energy. HFY tried to dodge, but the Valari were not built for fighting. The plasma cut through their crystal body like fire through ice. HFY fell to the floor, their body cracking and dimming. Crystal fragments scattered across the metal floor, each piece reflecting the terrible scene like a broken mirror. Sarah dropped to her knees beside her mate, trying to hold the pieces together. HFY's voice was fading, but they still tried to speak. "Sarah," they whispered, their crystal body flickering like a dying star. "I'd love—" And then the light went out. HFY's crystal body went dark and still, and Sarah was holding nothing but broken pieces of the being she loved more than her own life. The research hall went completely silent except for Sarah's breathing. The other Valari stood frozen in horror and grief. The Krex warriors watched with satisfaction. Thorak wiped his blade clean and sheathed it. "Let this be a lesson to the rest of the station," he announced. "This is what happens to those who do not show proper respect to their betters." He turned to leave, but stopped when he heard a sound. It was soft at first, barely audible. Then it grew louder and more terrible. Sarah Chen was screaming. It was not the scream of grief or fear. It was something older and deeper, something that came from the very core of human nature. It was the sound a species made when they lost everything that mattered. The sound echoed through the research hall, through the corridors, through the entire station. Every being who heard it felt something change in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Thorak looked back at the screaming human with mild interest. Grief makes some species very loud, he said to his warriors. We should go. Our work here is done. But as they walked away, none of them noticed that Sarah's screaming had stopped. She knelt on the floor holding the pieces of her mate, and her eyes had gone completely cold. Something was waking up inside Sarah Chen. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Something that the galaxy had never seen before. The Creks had made a terrible mistake. They had hurt the human's mate, and they were about to learn what that really meant. The silence that followed Sarah's scream was unlike anything the station had ever experienced. It was not empty silence, but the terrible quiet that comes before something breaks forever. Sarah knelt on the floor, cradling the pieces of HFY's crystal body. Her hands were cut from the sharp edges and her blood mixed with the sparkling fragments. She did not seem to notice the pain. The other Velari stood around her in a circle, their crystal bodies dim with grief. Dr. Kelvar, despite his own injuries, moved closer to Sarah. He had seen humans before, but never one who had lost their mate. Dr. Chen, he chimed softly, his voice like distant wind chimes. I am sorry. HFY is beloved by all our people. Sarah did not respond. She was looking at something far away, something only she could see. Her breathing was slow and steady, but there was something in her eyes that made the old Velari step back. Across the station, something strange was happening. In the security office, the human guards had stopped their patrol reports. In the engineering section, human technicians had put down their tools. In the medical bay, human doctors had gone completely still. They could all feel it. Every human on Kepler Station could feel what had happened to Sarah Chen. It was like a signal transmitted through invisible wires, a call that spoke to something buried deep in human DNA. One of them had been hurt through their mate. One of their pack had lost their family, and the humans were responding. Dr. Martinez in the medical bay was the first to move. She set down her scanner and walked out of the examination room, leaving her Altarian patient confused on the table. Her face was calm, but her eyes held the same distant look as Sarah's. Security guard Thompson put down his communicator in the middle of a sentence. His partner, a friendly Kethvar named Rixtal, watched in confusion as Thompson walked away without explanation. Engineer Park stopped in the middle of fixing a power coupling. The next high supervisor floated nearby asking what was wrong, but Park did not answer. He simply walked toward the center of the station. In the research hall, Sarah finally stood up. She moved slowly, carefully placing the pieces of HFY's body on a nearby table. Her hands were gentle, treating each fragment like it was precious beyond measure. Sarah? Dr. Kelvar asked. What are you doing? Sarah turned to look at him. Her face was completely calm now, but her eyes were different. They were the eyes of something ancient and dangerous, something that civilization had tried to bury but could never truly kill. I'm going to talk to War Champion Thorak, she said. Her voice was quiet and steady. Sarah, no, Dr. Kelvar chimed urgently. He will kill you as he killed HFY. The Creks are warriors. You are a scientist. Sarah looked down at her blood-stained hands. No, she said. I'm something else now. She walked out of the research hall, her footsteps echoing in the corridor. Behind her, the Velari watched in confusion and growing fear. They could sense something they had never felt from a human before, something that made their empathic abilities scream warnings. Sarah was not alone as she walked through the station. Other humans fell into step beside her without speaking. Dr. Martinez from medical, Thompson from security, Park from engineering, a dozen others from different sections of the station. They did not plan this. They did not communicate or organize. They simply moved together like parts of the same organism, drawn by instincts older than their civilization. The other species on the station noticed the strange behavior. Altarians pressed themselves against walls as the humans passed. Nextai floated higher to get out of their way. Even the confident Kethvar stepped aside. There was something different about the humans now, something that made every other being's survival instincts activate at once. They moved with purpose and deadly grace like predators who had finally stopped pretending to be herbivores. Marcus Kane's ship was still hours away from the station. He had finished the supply delivery and was racing back as fast as his engines could carry him. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones, even across the empty space between him and home. His communicator crackled to life. Marcus? It was Administrator Korvac, and the next tie sounded terrified. "Marcus, you need to get back here. Something has happened. The humans, the signal cut out. Marcus pushed his engines harder, but he knew he would not make it in time. Whatever was happening on Kepler Station was already beginning. War Champion Thorak was in the station's central command area, reviewing the tactical layout with his officers. The research hall demonstration had gone perfectly. Soon the station council would surrender, and another world would bow to Krek's superiority. "Sir," one of his warriors said, "we're getting reports of unusual human behavior throughout the station." Thorak looked up from his tactical display. "What kind of behavior?" "They're all moving toward the center of the station, sir." "Moving together, like they're organized," Thorak laughed. "Humans organized? I doubt that. They're probably planning some kind of protest or surrender ceremony." But his warrior looked uncertain. "Sir, the other species are acting strange too. They're hiding. Even the Kethvar security guards have barricaded themselves in their offices." Before Thorak could respond, the command center doors opened. Sarah Chen walked in alone, her bloody hands visible at her sides. She looked small and fragile compared to the armored Krek's warriors. "War Champion Thorak," she said in a voice that was perfectly calm, "I want to talk to you." Thorak's warriors reached for their weapons, but he waved them back. This was amusing. The little human female thought she could face him after what he had done to her mate. "Talk?" Thorak said, standing to his full height. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" Sarah looked around the command center, taking in the tactical displays and weapon systems. Her gaze settled on Thorak's ornate blade, still stained with HFY's crystal essence. "I want to challenge you," she said. The Krek's warriors burst into laughter. The idea of a small human challenging their war champion was ridiculous beyond belief. But Thorak was not laughing. He was studying Sarah's face, her posture, the way she held herself. Something about her reminded him of his own people in the moments before battle. "Challenge me?" he repeated. "To what?" "Single combat," Sarah said. "According to ancient Krek's law, any being can challenge a war champion to personal combat. If the challenger wins, they can demand satisfaction for crimes committed." Thorak's red eyes narrowed. The human knew Krek's law, which meant she had been studying his people. "That was interesting. And if you lose?" he asked. "Then you can do whatever you want to the station," Sarah said. No resistance from anyone. Thorak considered this. He could simply kill her now, of course, but the ancient laws were sacred to the Kreks, and there were his warriors watching. If he refused a formal challenge, it would show weakness. Besides, killing the human in single combat would be much more satisfying than simply murdering her. "Very well," Thorak said. "I accept your challenge. We will fight in the central plaza where everyone can watch. When I kill you, they will all understand the price of defying the Krek's dominion." Sarah nodded. "1 hour," she said. "Give me time to prepare." She turned and walked out of the command center. Thorak watched her go, already planning how he would dismember her for the entertainment of his warriors. None of the Kreks noticed that other humans had been standing in the corridors outside the command center. They had heard every word of the challenge, and now they were spreading the news throughout the station. The message was simple. Sarah Chen had challenged War Champion Thorak to single combat for the murder of HFY. But the humans who carried this message knew something that Thorak did not. They knew what Sarah really was, what she had always been beneath the gentle exterior of a scientist. Sarah Chen had been born on Earth, on a continent where humans had spent thousands of years learning to hunt creatures much larger and more dangerous than themselves. Her ancestors had brought down woolly mammoths with nothing but sharp sticks and teamwork. They had faced saber-toothed cats and giant bears and learned to win. The Kreks thought they were facing a soft civilian, but they were about to meet something much older and more dangerous than any single warrior. They were about to meet a human who had nothing left to lose. In 1 hour, War Champion Thorak would learn why humans had conquered their homeworld so completely that they had forgotten their own predatory nature. He would learn why peaceful humans were the most dangerous kind of all. The central plaza of Kepler Station had never been designed for what was about to happen. It was a peaceful space where different species came to trade and socialize. Now it was about to become an arena. Word of the challenge had spread throughout the station faster than fire. Every being who could move had gathered to watch, though most stayed far back from the cleared fighting area. They had all heard what happened to HFY, and they all understood what this fight really meant. War champion Thorax stood in the center of the plaza, his massive form covered in full battle armor. His plasma blade hummed with deadly energy, and his red eyes gleamed with anticipation. Around him, 20 Krex warriors formed a circle, their own weapons ready. The other species watched from behind barriers and doorways. Altarians with their blue skin pressed against windows. Next, I floated near the ceiling, their gas-filled bodies trembling with fear. Even the usually confident Kethvar had retreated to safe distances. But the humans were different. They stood at the edge of the fighting circle, completely still and silent. There were maybe 30 of them total on the station, and they had all come to watch. Their faces showed no emotion, but there was something in their eyes that made even the Krex warriors uncomfortable. Dr. Martinez from the medical bay had brought a field kit, though everyone knew this fight would have only one ending. Engineer Park stood beside her, his hands empty but somehow more threatening than if he had been carrying weapons. Security guard Thompson watched from near the entrance, blocking the only exit from the plaza. "Where is she?" Thorak called out, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "Where is the foolish human who thinks she can face a Krex war champion?" The answer came from the far end of the plaza. Sarah Chen walked into the fighting area alone, and everyone who saw her stopped breathing for a moment. She had changed out of her lab coat and into simple black clothes that let her move freely. Her hands were clean now. The blood washed away, but there were still cuts on her palms from holding Zephai's broken body. She carried no weapons, no armor, nothing but her own determination. She looked impossibly small compared to Thorak. The war champion stood 8 feet tall and weighed 3 times as much as she did. His armor could stop plasma blasts, and his blade could cut through metal like paper. But something about Sarah made the watching alien step back further. She moved differently now, like a predator that had been pretending to be prey for so long that everyone had forgotten what she really was. "I am here," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly across the plaza. Thorak laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "Look at you," he said. "No weapons, no armor. You are even smaller than I thought. This will be over in seconds." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "It will be." The way she said it made some of the Krex warriors exchange glances. There was no fear in her voice, no doubt. She sounded like someone stating a simple fact. Administrator Korvac floated down from his observation post, his tentacles moving in formal patterns. "By ancient Krex law," he announced, "this challenge is recognized. Single combat between war champion Thorak of the Krex Dominion and Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth. The winner may claim satisfaction for wrongs committed. Begin," Thorak roared, raising his plasma blade. What happened next would be talked about throughout the galaxy for years to come. Thorak swung his blade in a massive arc that should have cut Sarah in half. But she was not there anymore. She had moved faster than anyone thought possible, sliding under his swing and coming up behind him. Her first strike hit the joint where his armor plates met at the knee. It was a precision blow that most beings would not even know existed, but humans had been studying anatomy for thousands of years. They knew exactly where every species was weakest. Thorak stumbled, his leg buckling. He spun around, swinging his blade in a defensive pattern, but Sarah was already gone. She moved around him like water, never staying in one place long enough for him to target. Her second strike hit his wrist, right where the nerve cluster controlled his grip. The plasma blade fell from his suddenly numb fingers, clattering on the metal floor. "Impossible," one of the Krex warriors whispered. But it was not impossible. It was human. Sarah's ancestors had hunted mammoths by following them for days, wearing them down, striking at weak points until the massive creatures collapsed from exhaustion and blood loss. They had learned to fight animals 10 times their size by being smarter, faster, and more persistent than anything else on their planet. Thorak tried to grab her with his massive hands, but Sarah flowed away from every attack. She struck him again and again, each blow perfectly placed to cause maximum damage. His armor began to crack. His breathing became labored. "Stand still and fight," Thorak roared in frustration. "No," Sarah said simply. She hit him in the throat, exactly where his vocal cords connected to his breathing system. Thorak's roar became a wheeze. He swung wildly, but his movements were getting slower and less coordinated. The watching Krex warriors reached for their weapons, but the humans around the edge of the circle stepped forward as one. They made no threatening moves, but something about their unified response made the Krex freeze. This was not just about Sarah anymore. This was about what humans became when their families were threatened. Thorak fell to one knee, his massive frame shaking with effort. He could not understand what was happening. He was a war champion, trained from birth to fight and kill. He had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated hundreds of enemies. But he had never faced anything like Sarah Chen. She moved behind him again, and this time she did not strike a pressure point or nerve cluster. This time she grabbed his head with both hands and twisted. The sound of thorax neck breaking echoed through the silent plaza like a gunshot. The war champion fell forward, his body hitting the metal floor with a crash that shook the entire platform. He was dead before he stopped moving. Sarah stood over his body for a moment, breathing steadily. Then she reached down and grasped Thorax's head, lifting it with both hands. The weight meant nothing to her now. Adrenaline and grief and millions of years of human evolution had made her stronger than she had ever been. She turned to face the remaining Krex warriors, holding their leader's head in front of them. When she spoke, it was in perfect Krex dialect, using words and phrases that she should not have known. "You wanted to teach the weak about strength," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the plaza. "Class is in session." She threw Thorax's head at the feet of his warriors. It rolled across the metal floor, leaving a trail of dark fluid behind it. "This is what happens," Sarah continued in the same deadly calm voice, "when you harm a human's mate. This is what happens when you threaten a human's family. This is what happens when you forget that we are not prey." The Krex warriors looked at their leader's severed head, then at the small human female who had killed him with her bare hands. For the first time in their lives, they felt something they had never experienced before. They felt fear. We will leave," one of them stammered. "We will return to our ships and leave this sector." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "You will. And you will tell every Krex in the galaxy what you saw here. You will tell them what humans do to those who hurt their families." The warriors began backing toward the exit, their weapons forgotten. They could not take their eyes off Sarah, this small being who had destroyed their supposedly invincible champion. "You will tell them," Sarah continued, "that humans are not the peaceful explorers they pretend to be. You will tell them that we are something much more dangerous. You will tell them that we love so deeply that threatening our chosen family awakens something that your armor and weapons cannot stop." The Krex reached the exit and fled. They ran through the corridors of Kepler Station like children fleeing from nightmares, desperate to reach their ships and escape this place where the natural order had been turned upside down. Behind them, the plaza remained silent. The other species stared at Sarah Chen, this human scientist who had just killed a war champion with her bare hands. They began to understand something that would change their view of humans forever. Humans were not just another peaceful species. They were apex predators who had chosen to be gentle. They were killers who had decided to be healers. They were warriors who preferred peace, but when that peace was shattered, they became something that no armor or weapon could stand against. Sarah walked back to where she had left the pieces of Zephai's body. She knelt down and carefully gathered them up, holding them close to her chest. Dr. Martinez approached slowly, her medical kit in hand. "Sarah," she said softly, "let me help you with those cuts." Sarah looked at her fellow human and nodded. The terrible cold fire in her eyes was beginning to fade, replaced by grief and exhaustion. "It's over," Dr. Martinez said, beginning to clean Sarah's wounds. "No," Sarah replied, looking down at the crystal fragments that had been her mate. "It's just beginning. They'll never forget what happened here. The whole galaxy will know what humans become when their families are threatened." She was right. Within hours, the fleeing Krex ships were broadcasting the story throughout their territory. Within days, it had spread to every species in the galaxy. The peaceful humans, the gentle explorers and scientists and diplomats had revealed their true nature. They were not prey. They had never been prey.